We'll go ahead and get started there. And the first, probably the biggest trade, and the one that's what's going on, Zach?
Nope, you're good. Keep going. That was my fault.
Okay. I was about to say we're starting early with them. Let's go.
little difficulty.
But I think the one that really set the stage for kind of what shaped the league and the Detroit Tigers is the Dodgers sending Joe Adell there. Obviously, they were off to a good start before that, but the Dodgers get back a big package of prospects: Jim Green, Eric Mansfield, Trenton Shaw, Cesar Rios, Castillo, Israel Seja. A little bit of a slow start for Adell in Detroit, but you get the defense no matter what. All three of those starting pitcher prospects currently in the top 100 there for the Dodgers. Jason, what did you kind of make of this deal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Nick was really going for it here. After the fast start for the Tigers, brings in Adell to be, kind of that centerpiece of the team. It seems like the Dodgers, obviously, we're going to talk about some other trades they made, but they're really just breaking it down at this point. Like you said, getting the three guys in the top 100 prospects right now, plus a couple of other guys who I think, like a guy like Jim Green, who could be a solid catcher. Still doesn't have a catcher rating according to my scout, but he does have 60 catcher ability. So he's another guy who should in the future maybe be, if not a starting catcher, at least a pretty decent backup. But I think they got a really good haul for Adell. And the Tigers get a premier player who's on a pretty good contract, I think, given where he is signed to. I think he's age 31 season or so. So yeah, I think it's a move that made sense for both teams. The Tigers going forward, giving up a ton of talent, but the Dodgers get a huge return. I think a return that's well worth a talent like Adell, especially when you take those three top pitchers into account.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought, a lot of talent. The Dodgers, like you said, we'll get into it, but kind of having to burn down what they got left over there. But think it's a deal that made a lot of sense for the Tigers and the start they got off to. The next one is we bring a familiar face back to Toronto. The Yankees send Kenta Maeda back there. He's been phenomenal since he's been back in Toronto. Obviously, gotta worry about him getting hurt at any second, but been great since there. They get back starting pitcher Sean Poppin and a pitching prospect in Dave Woodrum. Nick, what'd you think of that one?
I liked it for both teams. Kenta Maeda is a solid starting pitcher, and Toronto needs all the solid pitching all around they can get because that team has just been a ticking time bomb in terms of injuries. He's up there in years, but he's got an extremely friendly team deal for next season. No reason to think that he'll drop off anytime soon, despite his age. The biggest concern, like you mentioned, is that he is fragile, and that has been a recipe for disaster this year in Toronto. Woodrum, I think, is a good return for him. It's a good risk-reward trade. He's up there in years for a prospect. He's 24, but he does have frontline potential. But the question is, will he reach it? Poppin is really just, I believe, a throw-in piece to make the finances work. I like the trade for both teams.
Yeah, definitely agreed with you. Nice, as Zach showed, nice three-pitch repertoire there for Woodrum, so a good return there. Next one, Jason, we're going to let you touch on the Dodgers again. They send Aaron Nola to Minnesota for, and there's some retention involved in this in a couple different places, but they get back Craig Kimbrell, Brad Wick, third base prospect Leon Pineda, and catching prospect J.J. Hogan. It looks like Nola struggled a little bit early days in Minnesota. At least to me, Pineda looks like a super interesting prospect. But your thoughts on that deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting trade. Minnesota's kind of fallen out of it a little bit. They're 6 games under. Nola has a player opt-out after the year, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But again, it's another one where I think the Dodgers are really just going into full sell mode, going into rebuild. I really like Pineda and Hogan, 2 guys who, again, I think will help them a lot in the future. I think they're both kind of a little bit far away, but Pineda's a big time prospect, got a very much a top of the order type of profile to him with the huge arm at third base. And then Hogan, I think is going to be a starting catcher in this league. And then I think Wick and Kimbrel were just kind of to probably make the money work a little bit, similar to the previous trade. But yeah, I like this more for the Dodgers than I do for Minnesota, just based on where the teams are now and the situation with Nola being kind of a fragile arm with the opt out at the end of the year.
Yep, definitely agree with you there. All right, next one up, Nick. We'll let you get in on the Dodgers fund. So they send Caleb Ferguson in LA, a reliever, in Chicago for 3 starts, a starter. They get back another prospect return, right fielder Danny Duenas, starting pitcher Jose Pinate, and starting pitcher Rich Mercado. Obviously, as Zach's showing, the injury. He only makes it through 3 starts before he goes down for an extended period of time. Good return, obviously, for the Dodgers again, but your thoughts on the deal?
I still like it. Luckily, Ferguson's still got 2 especially if he's going to be a starter for the Cubs, extremely team-friendly options going forward for the next 2 seasons. Hopefully he can stay healthy for them, because he could be a major piece for a rejuvenated Cubs team. The centerpiece of the trade, I would say, is Mercado. He's got high upside. If he hits his potentials, he's just he'll be a really good all-around pitcher with very few holes in his game. He throws mid-upper 90s with a potentially elite changeup. Duenas, he's got a good power bat. I think he'll strike out a lot. His speed is very intriguing. He's a good base runner, very fast. His defense is a work in progress, but given that he's 20, I think he'll be better than average in the outfield. And Pineda, a 20-year-old, a durable pitcher. He's trending in the right direction. He's far from a finished product, but I hear he has major character concerns.
Doing your scouting diligence there, I like it. All right, so next one, obviously still early days for this one, but just got done a couple sims ago. The Rays send Seranthony Dominguez to the Rockies. They get back 2 first baseman prospects. One, Kevin Cooper, who looks pretty ready to go, might be some of the reason for the Bryce Ball talk, and the other, Joey Irwin, just a little bit younger of a prospect. The Rockies pitching, it's been awful impressive this season. Middle of the road and runs given up for them is just crazy. So your thoughts, Jason, on this deal?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that the Rays weren't able to get more for Dominguez, given he's only making $3 million. So a $3 million team option for next year, that's almost undoubtedly going to be picked up. You said that they get the 2 first base only prospects, which seems a little light to me when you're getting guys who are specifically tied to first. Irwin doesn't really stand out as someone who's going to be a first baseman. I agree with you on Cooper. I think he's pretty close to ready, and will probably replace Bryce Ball once he's moved. But it's just a little surprising in terms of the return. I thought Dominguez would command a little more than he did. I think it's a really good move for the Rockies, who, as you said, have been getting surprisingly good pitching given the Rockies.
Yep, totally agree. And we'll wrap it up with a name we talked about a bunch on last year's show, Edwin Diaz. The Padres move him a little prior to the deadline to Toronto. Toronto gets back 2 prospects, Mike Swinson, an outfielder, and Luis Perez, a starting pitcher. Nick, your thoughts on this deal?
I like this deal too. Once again, Toronto needs as many arms as they can get, because they're just going down every sim. It's really uncanny at this point. The return, Edwin Diaz is obviously a great back-end reliever. Right now, he's not closing in Toronto, but they have some nice pieces there at the back of the pen. The return, Mike Swenson, former first-round pick. He looks like he's fallen off a bit. Looks like he's more of a 4th outfielder type, but he's only 20. He could potentially rebound from that. And Luis Perez, huge upside on this kid, and he's improved a lot in a short time, but much like I just touched on, he also has some serious clubhouse concerns. Here he is not a very humble person.
You got the character things nailed down. Yeah, no, it's that's gonna be a fun one to see how he develops, because obviously that has the potential to be a big time arm there for sure as a return. All right, we'll transition on to kind of breaking down where we're at with some of the contenders. I couldn't do all the math in my head post sim today, so we'll be kind of going off of where we were coming into the sim, but we'll start in the AL East, and we'll start with you, Jason. We have the Orioles up top in the AL East, which is a great sight to see. The Blue Jays are, as of last sim, we're a half game up of that second wild card, 8 out of the division. The Rays at 7 back are probably, I think they're sellers at this point. Probably not a team we expected to be that far back at this point, but they're sellers, and the Yankees and Red Sox kind of obviously sellers. But your thoughts on the top of that division?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of upside down from where you generally expect it to be. The Orioles saying at the top, after they in the offseason, they trade their best player, Adley Rutschman, to the Cubs, where he's been really good, but they haven't really missed a beat behind the plate. Kyle Teel has stepped in and been incredible for them. 857 OPS, been solid behind the plate for them. They're one of the better hitting teams in the American League. Their starters are great. Where they can probably use some help is, and this is true of most teams, is in the bullpen. That's where they've kind of struggled. Have some big ERAs back there. They can definitely use someone at the back end as a true shutdown closer that they don't really have right now. You'll probably use at least another arm or two in there at least heading into the deadline. So we'll see where they go. And then with Toronto, Nick hit it with all the injuries that they have to the pitching staff. They can use arms all over the place, whether it's in the bullpen or in the rotation. They're another team. Their offense is solid. They could probably use some help. Maybe another bat somewhere. I know there's a lot of second basemen available. That's a place where they can potentially upgrade. But yeah, I think where they have to look is on the arms, just based on all the injuries they have. That's just where they need to look right now.
Yep, totally agree with you there. All right, we'll stick with you, Jason, and we'll transition on to the Central. The gap was closing at the top. I think the Tigers had a better sim today, but they had lost 4-0 today, so they had lost 6 straight coming into the sim. The lead at the top had shrunk down to 1 over the Spiders. But obviously, 2 of the premier teams in the league right now. Only 5 teams have 60 wins, and they're 2 of them. Spiders with a big lead in the wild card, and behind them, you look at the Royals, who they were losers of 6 straight coming into the sim, which kind of probably ruined some chances for them. But they sit 4.5 back. Definitely not fully out of it yet. White Sox and Twins kind of right behind them too. So little on the fence for those teams whether they would buy or sell. But Jason, your thoughts on the Central?
Yeah, the Tigers, sitting at the top, best offense in the American League. They're another team. They can really use some pitching help, I think, in both the rotation and the bullpen. The bullpen, maybe one more arm, but the rotation needs a decent amount of work, I think. Mai's out for the year. They really don't have a real true reliable starter right now. I know they have Jose Barrios, who they got from the I believe from the Braves, but he just hasn't had the year they've been expecting. And I think there's not a ton of starting pitchers out there on the market, but I think that's where the Tigers should be looking right now. And then for Cleveland, they need some offense. Their pitching is really good. They have the best starting rotation in the American League, arguably. Really good bullpen. Where they need help is in the lineup. They really haven't gotten much from their shortstops this year. That's a place they can look. I think they can look maybe to upgrade. Maybe a catcher a bit, get some offense there. I know Juan Sierra has been good for them, posting 1.6 WAR largely because he's been really solid defensively. But they need to find another bat if they're going to stay in contention with a team like the Tigers, who are the best offense in arguably baseball right now.
Yep, That's going to be a fun one to watch as we go down the stretch.
No.
All right, Nick, we'll get to you and we'll touch on the AL West. Tied at the top, at least coming into the sim today, with the Astros holding a half-game lead over the Angels. The Angels are that same half game out of the wild card, at least coming into it today. So two teams that are kind of right in the throes of it. The other three, Seattle, Texas, and Oakland. Despite Seattle being a little hot of late, I think are probably out of it. But your thoughts on those top two and what they need?
Houston's one of the more fun teams in the league this year. I didn't quite see them coming. He's been building in the right direction, but the additions of Suzuki and Tony have just taken them to the next level offensively. They have just been perfect for that team. Offensively, I don't really think he needs to do much. They have a good mix of veterans and youth filling out their roster. So offensively, I really like the Astros. They definitely need pitching upgrades just about everywhere. Most teams, like Jason said, everyone could use a bullpen upgrade. They could really use some. They could use some starters. It'll be tough to hold back the Angels, who are just a half game going in. I'm not sure now. The Angels are kind of opposite. They could really use some offense. Just taking a look, they could use someone to complement Anthony Rendon, maybe let him DH more and have somebody new take on first base. But they have some flexibility there, but they could really use another big bat. They are very good, and it feels like just a matter of time before that offense breaks out. There's just too much talent there for Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani to be subpar for their talents all year. The Angels' rotation is among the best in the league, and they aren't getting the production that they could out of them either. Definitely one of the best in the league. Bullpen solid talent-wise and has performed really well this year. But like we said, they can always use an upgrade there. This is, I think, a team to really keep an eye on. If they make some key moves today, they could really ignite and take over that division quickly.
Yep, totally agree with you there. All right, we'll stick with you, Nick, and transition over to the NL East. Kind of what we get scared about the Braves doing every year, but they're the first team they've opened up a double-digit game lead at the top there. They have the biggest lead of any team in their division. Mets and Nationals kind of hovering around 500, but they're just a couple, 2.5 and 4 games out, maybe a couple more now of the wild card, so still very much in that. But for those three, kind of your thoughts on what they need moving forward.
The Braves, not a lot of holes in the team as long as they're healthy. Probably the most talented pitching staff in the entire league, from top to bottom. What I noticed is at shortstop, it seems like they've been playing a trio of Acosta, Reyes, and Marte, and it hasn't given them the production that team could get out of that position, and that's a spot I'll keep an eye on today. The Mets, the rest of the division, I think will go into selling mode. Even though the Mets are still in the thick of it for a wild card spot, if he doesn't think his team's really capable of winning World Series, he does have a couple pieces they could really cash big on. I would say it's a solid all-around team, but they could see themselves, like I said, at a crossroads and just try to get something big for, say, somebody like Ronnie Mauricio, who, I mean, what team couldn't use a 25-year-old shortstop who's that good?
Yep.
If they do decide to deal, their bullpen's an interesting thing to watch because they have some very nice pieces that any team could use. When it comes to the Nats, I think they're going to pivot going forward and become a long-term seller. That Juan Soto decline is terribly sad.
Yep, tough one to see there, obviously. All right, we'll move on to the Central, and Kind of dealer's choice on who you want to call a contender or not in this division. The Reds, I believe, will still have the lead in the division, just a little bit over 500. The Cardinals kind of right on their tails. The Cubs right there. The Brewers have fallen. The Brewers and Pirates kind of surprisingly are the ones to have fallen a little bit off the pace at this point. But still, that's a division I could see almost any team still winning at this point. But Jason, your thoughts on what it looks like right now moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where we are as of this most recent sim, but the Reds are in the first place in the division by about 3 games. And it's interesting because that's a team that can use help in a lot of places. Their offense has 3 players with an OPS plus above 100, with only one of them with an OPS plus above 108. I mean, they can use offense pretty much anywhere right now. And then, on the pitching side, another team that could probably use an additional starter. Mick Gable hasn't really given them what they would have expected. Matt Manning hasn't been as good as they would have expected. So I think, those are 2. This is a team that can go really in any direction. But most importantly, they need a bat in the worst way because right now their offense, they just don't have enough, I don't think, to really do anything moving forward. And then moving on to the Cardinals, that's another team that I think can use a bat. Right now, they're starting Brody Drost in center field, who's excellent rated defensively, but just not giving you much with the bat. And I think this could be the big name. I think that's been on the market for a while is Cody Bellinger, and this is what seems to be a perfect landing spot for him. But they're a team that can also use the bullpen arms, use a starter, just like everybody else. And then the Cubs, who have a ton of young pitching, I look at them and I see a team that, despite all the young pitching, really needs pitching to really get into it right now. It just depends on what they want to do. If they decide they want to give those young pitchers some experience, they may decide to just kind of stand pat. But if they're looking to be competitive this year, they need pitching. Another team that can use a bullpen arm or 2, and probably an additional starter.
All right, we'll close it out with, I think everyone's favorite division, the NL West. But Colorado has kind of opened it up top there. They've been one of the better teams in baseball to this point this year. Might have the best record in baseball at this point. But the Padres and Diamondbacks, at least coming into today, were both leading the wild card. So 3 playoff teams, I think, if we ended the season today. Giants obviously still drunk from the World Series, so they're having a rough go of it. And then finally the Dodgers, as we've talked about, selling off a little bit. But Nick, your thoughts on the NL West?
Yeah, as always, a fun division. Even though the Rockies have opened it up, the other teams are dominating the wild card so far. The Rockies, obviously not much to do. Top to bottom, one of the better rosters in the league. The pitching always impresses me, considering they play in Coors. Could use an upgrade, like as touched on with everyone. Where I think the Rockies could improve is their corner outfield spots. Jahmai Jones and David Dahl have been solid, but given the position, given the offense there, and then given the opportunity, upgrading the bats at those positions could just lead to the Rockies just totally taking off. The Padres just really could use offensively, add some nice pieces around that infield trio of Tatis, Urias, and Escorche. I could see them making moves to upgrade a catcher first or right field. Rotation's solid, especially with Capriata pitching really well as of late. Bullpen has a few nice pieces, but really could use some more depth. The Diamondbacks, pitching's excellent. The offense needs a lot of help. He could upgrade at second, third, short, left field. But that offense really needs to get some upgrades to compete in that division. The Giants experiencing a bit of a championship hangover. Offense is young across the board, unless you get a younger upgrade there. Not really sure what they're supposed to do. Kind of what I said about them last year. They're experiencing growing pains. I anticipate them standing pat unless a nice third grade upgrade is available out there. The pen is performing really well, but talent-wise, it's not the deepest group. Could, as always, add a very good back-end reliever.
All right, there we go. So let's get into some of these names we've mentioned. Zach has the list.
Tyler, I'm going to cut you right there. We have our first trade of the night and our first interruption of the night. The Cincinnati Reds have acquired starting pitcher Hunter Green from the Atlanta Braves in exchange for prospect Jose Rico.
All right, so there's our first one. Hunter Green moves the Braves with that depth of pitching that we just kind of touched on. Obviously, can move some names. Hadn't done a ton. Was kind of splitting time between the rotation and the pen there in Atlanta. So get a prospect back for him. Not money on the books there, but just get a return for a guy who's been mediocre, probably at best there. Any thoughts on this swap?
Rico looks like he's trending in the right direction. Not huge upside, but could be a solid pitcher.
Yeah, I like the Reds taking a chance on Hunter Green here. I mean, he still rates as a guy who could be a solid starter. I know going to their ballpark isn't exactly the best, but I think it's a worthwhile gamble for them. A guy who's still not even arbitration eligible yet.
Yep, and it kind of addresses a need we definitely touched on for them as well. All right, let's get into our list. So, we saw these. I think the name at the top is probably pretty obvious in Cody Bellinger. Probably no offense to Austin Martin having a great year, Suzuki and Houston having a great year, but Bellinger's probably been the best player in baseball so far this season. So you see that name out there, obviously you have to kind of look twice and do your due diligence. But Jason, your thoughts on him and some potential landing spots?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, maybe the best player in baseball right now. A true 5-tool player. He's expensive, $35 million this year. It's only one more year at $35 million, so we'll see what Texas is willing to retain it, if at all. But I touched on the Cardinals, who could really use an offensive upgrade in center field. The Reds can use a bat. So we'll see where they end up going, where he ends up going, because I think it sounds like he's almost definitely going to move. And see, it'll be interesting to see what the retention and prospect package ends up being. If someone has to give up more to get a little bit more of retention, that's probably where I think it's going to go.
Yeah, and I think with that, that extra year next year gives a little more incentive than it being a pure, hey, you got to come in and work out a deal straight away type situation. All right, up next, Nick.
We got another one coming in. The Boston Red Sox have traded pitcher Jorge Guzman to the Houston Astros in exchange for prospect Jerry Parra.
All right, I like Guzman's a name I like. I was looking at him a little bit before this. Two really nice pitches. It'll be interesting to see if he projects long term as a starter with the low stamina and the lack of a true third pitch. But either way, it feels like a guy who could be a really helpful bullpen piece for the Astros there. Red Sox, obviously, sellers there. Anyone had a chance to look at Parra and what he does?
Yeah, he's a hard throwing lefty. He is fragile, so that's always a risk with pitchers. But he's got a shot to be a solid left-handed pitcher. Might stick in the bullpen if his control doesn't get there, but looks like he's got a decent shot at making it.
Yeah, throws 5 pitches. 3 of them are already solid or above. A curveball that's kind of stuck below, and a changeup that he needs to work on. But only 21 years old, so there's time for him to work it out. And he's been good at high A so far this year.
Yeah, I think fine value for Boston. Obviously, selling a guy 30 years old, don't have to expect a lot, but a good upside prospect for them to get. So, back to number 2 on our list. Nick, you touched on him a bit when we broke down the NL East and the Mets, but Ronnie Mauricio, obviously an elite defensive shortstop. A lot of control left on him. Your thoughts on him and where he could fit?
I think he's one of the best young players in the league. I'd be surprised if he's moved today, but Mets would get a huge haul if they decided to part with the young shortstop. He struggled a bit this year, but a change of scenery is possibly all he needs to spark his rejuvenation. He struggled at the plate and in the field this year, but with his talent, I can see him turn it around pretty quickly. The list of teams that could use him is going to be a little bit longer, as most teams could, realistically. Baltimore, Cleveland, Houston, Angels, Braves, Reds, Cubs, Diamondbacks. I mean, most teams could use him.
Yeah, it's when we went through it, it feels like if you took all the divisions away, the Braves might be the most obvious landing spot, but that's a tough one to do in division if you want to flip a young talent like that.
Tyler, we're going to stick with the Boston Red Sox theme here. They have sent corner infielder Justin Yurchek to the San Diego Padres in exchange for pitcher Magdiel Cotto.
Okay. Yurchek is a fun profile. I think he probably ends up having to be a first baseman, just with his skills and abilities at third. It plays a lot better at first. A great on-base profile for him. Not a guy that's going to hit a ton of home runs or a bunch of extra base hits, but will get on base a lot with that type of profile. Obviously, adding a captain to the locker room is never a bad thing either. So a good get for a team that could definitely use some offense. What do we think about the return for Yurchek?
It looks like another decent upside starting pitcher for the Red Sox. Cotto, another lefty, so the Red Sox seem to have a thing for a certain type of pitcher. I think he's got a real shot at making it. And he's 24. He's not far off. Could see him debuting maybe as soon as this year, but next year for sure.
Jason, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Cotto's a guy who, when I brought up Giomar Diaz, he was in the discussion. He was in my thoughts, too, about bringing him up. So I think he's pretty close to ready. But, yeah, Yurchek's going to basically step in as my first baseman, replace Sean Howe, be a guy who maybe hits one or two in the lineup with Luis Urias, and hopefully gets on base for some of the big bats in the middle.
Yeah, nice affordable contract, an easy one to get done to get a solid bat in the lineup for sure.
Hey, Tyler, before you get started on the next one, we're going to get another trade in here, another one from out of Boston. They've sent relief pitcher Genesis Cabrera to the Cleveland Spiders in exchange for outfielder Xavier Isaac, and Genesis Cabrera is 100% retained.
All right, we got Genesis Cabrera is having the advanced numbers are pretty nice on him this year, striking out some batters. He's 3-3 with a mid-4 ERA. Actually, just a guy they got off waivers from Philadelphia, so good to get some value there just a year later on him. But a guy having a pretty nice year, some big-time stuff in the pen, a really nice three-pitch mix for Cabrera there. Your guys' thoughts on the deal and the return?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason.
I like it for the Spiders. The return is Xavier Isaac is a solid. He's a kind of a big time power guy. May not make a lot of contact at the big league level. Has been he's having a really good year in Double-A right now. But I think based on my scouting ratings, question about how much that might transfer up the pipeline. So we'll see. I think it's a good move for Cleveland to get Cabrera.
Isaacson will be an interesting one to see if he can improve, because just by looking at him, he looks like a finished product, but he's 22. His success has been really good in the minor leagues the last couple of years. The power looks to be there. He's one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, crushing it in Double-A right now, it appears. So that'll be a fun one to watch. All right, number 3 name on the list. So we get to a deadline that feels like it has a lot of pitchers on it. But we get our first one on the list, and that's Seattle starting pitcher Dylan Cease. Jason, your thoughts on him and where he could land?
Yeah, I mean, we discussed it, right? There's a lot of teams that can use a starter, and he's a good one. He had a 4.2 WAR season last year, at 2 WAR this year. Big time strikeout numbers. Features four really good pitchers, including a premier fastball and curveball. Like as I mentioned, on a pretty affordable contract. 12.5 this year, goes up to almost 14 next year with a team option for $16 million for the 28 season. So, he's a guy who's not a rental. He comes relatively cheap given his production. And as we mentioned, there's a number of teams that could definitely use a starter, and he might be the best available.
Yeah, all-star this year, coming off a couple nice starts since the break too. Yeah, definitely agree with you there.
We've got another trade, another American League East team. The Toronto Blue Jays have acquired pitcher Brock Burke, along with $490,000 in cash in exchange for Ty Floyd and Brandon Sprout from the Texas Rangers.
All right, so Brock Burke, who I can remember having ages ago, but has kind of moved around a little bit since. Picked up some places, having a solid year between Colorado and a little more success in Colorado than he had once he moved to Texas, which is actually kind of wild there. But another lefty, 3 good pitches, a solid arm to add. I think either way, you hope he reverts kind of back to those Rockies numbers. But you guys' thoughts on Burke in the return?
A much needed body for the Blue Jays.
More pitching.
Yeah, as much as they can handle.
Yeah, and the return isn't huge. Floyd is, there are 2 guys who are kind of on the older level for prospects. Floyd is 24, Sprout is 25. Either one of them could be in a major league bullpen right now. Floyd has control issues, but he's got good stuff that could potentially make up for it. And Sprout, maybe a borderline major leaguer, a guy who's a potential spot starter, swingman type.
All right, let's move on to number 4 on the list, and probably the names of fits will be similar to Bellinger at the top, but we have one of your all-time guys, Cedric Mullins, Nick, in Texas as well, kind of a multi-position outfielder as well, probably a cheaper price tag, but your thoughts on him and where he could fit?
Yeah, Ceddy's a legend in Detroit. He's very beloved here. I think outside of Bellinger, he should be one of the hottest bats teams go after this year. He's 31, very team-friendly option for next year. All-around quality player. You can stick him anywhere in the lineup. Potential fits, I think the Angels, the Rockies are an obvious fit, the Padres, and the Diamondbacks.
I like it. Good for Steady.
I'm going to interrupt you, Tyler. Another 2 more American League East teams striking. The Tampa Bay Rays have sent relief pitcher Jose Alvarado to the Baltimore Orioles in exchange for Cole Wagner and Denny Larondo.
Alvarado, I think one of the bigger relief pitcher names out there. He might have cracked this top 20. I'm not sure. He was right around the back end of it for us, but like I think y'all touched on, the Orioles needed some pin help bad. They get it in the way of another good name in Alvarado. Wagner, a prospect name I know. I'm not quite sure how he's developed, but your guys' thoughts on the deal and the return?
Yeah, like you said, Baltimore needs a bullpen arm. Is a perfect fit. Wagner's a first baseman who's got a pretty decent hitting profile. Kind of like Yurchak we mentioned before, more of an on-base guy for a first baseman. Posted a 403 OBP at AA last year, 361 this year. May not hit for much power that you expect out of a first baseman, but I think he's a solid guy. I don't know, Nick, if you've had a chance to look at Larondo.
Wagner can step in right away if the Rays trade Ball today.
They got options. They got the guy from Colorado in that deal, so they got. So it sounds more and more like Ball's going to be on the move, but he was available. I think the last time Biz went to sleep, so we'll see what comes there. Jose Alvarado, number 20 on the list. So our first name off there to get moved. All right, following up Mullins, we have another outfielder, one I'm a huge fan of, and sticking with Tampa Bay, and Taylor Trammell. Would be an interesting one to see move, still young, and I like him for kind of the future of the Rays. But Jason, your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's kind of bounced around a bit, but just kind of been a really good player everywhere he goes. Big time speed, could play all three outfield positions at different capabilities. His batting average is a little down, his OBP is a little down, but he's still a very good player. Like I said, could play all three positions. Has an extremely cheap contract, I think, for his production. He's still only 28 years old. It's basically $8.5 million for the next 4 years. So it'll be interesting to see if Tampa actually moves him, because I think they're always a team that can look for, this is a really good value guy. If they don't, I think it's going to have to be for a relatively big return. And as we mentioned, there's a number of teams that can use an outfield bat. The Cardinals come to mind. The Reds can use the offense. So
never bad to add a captain either.
Nope.
All right, that was my pause just to see. Right, we're going to move on to the next name on the list, and Cleveland starting pitcher Jonathan Loaisiga. Obviously, would be an interesting name to see move, just where the Spiders are, and and one of their better pitchers who's won them some big playoff games here recently. But Nick, I'm sure you'd be glad to see him move as well. Your thoughts on his name on this list?
Yeah, I think he's the best rental starting pitcher on the market, but I don't think he'll be priced as a rental starting pitcher. So I have my doubts he gets moved today, especially seeing as he's on one of the best teams in the league and one of a true World Series contender. Fits, I believe Baltimore's a fit. Toronto's obviously a fit. He would be a fit for the Tigers. He'd probably even be a fit for the Spiders and Houston.
Fit for the Spiders, I like that.
Tyler, we've got a deal, and it's a big one. Let me make sure I got this all correct here. We are going to Texas, and I think you guys know where this is heading. Cody Bellinger and Shane Bieber both have been sent, along with $3.7 million in cash, to, and I'm sorry, Nick, but they are heading to the Cleveland Spiders in exchange for, here's your list, Drew Waters and a bundle of minor league prospects.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so
We can't keep letting this happen.
obviously it's going to be.
Is there any retention there, or is it just the cash?
Just the cash.
Man, I should have known when Shane was trying to scrape me for like $500K. He was looking for it for wherever he could find it. But man, this is a return. Waters is probably the guy who's going to take the spot from a guy I think led the league in RBI maybe last year, a couple years ago. A couple of these prospects.
I'm sorry, Tyler. There is 15% retention on Cody Bellinger.
Okay, 15 on Bellinger. Still
Only like $4.5 million or so.
Yeah, let's say makes it still 30 or so for the deal. But Omandy Diaz, Bob Berg are a couple prospect names that I know that have jumped out to me there. But the Rangers get it done, start the rebuild, and welcome to the AL Central Cody Bellinger.
And I mean, I guess I know the Spiders are taking on a lot of money, but to do this without giving up either of their top two prospects to get, or even more, top three prospects to get, maybe the best player in baseball and a solid pitcher in Bieber. I know they're taking on money, but to keep Tate and Osborne while getting them is a pretty incredible move. Seems like a bit of a quantity over quality move for the Rangers. but they definitely are getting a lot of talent.
Yeah, the Shane Bieber return to Cleveland gets a little overshadowed when it's Cody Bellinger as the other part of the deal. But they kind of address things on both sides of the ball. Nick, just anything?
Detroit has no comment.
I think that's fair at this point. That's a big one. I think we expected to see a move probably with just how he's getting shopped. It's like I think we touched on, probably a quantity over quality return, kind of like some of the returns the Dodgers are going for. It seems like so. They're going to be a tough out in the AL, so that'll be a fun one to see.
Yeah, and I'll say Drew Waters is a $10 million contract for the next 2 years, so they do shed a little bit of money to bring on that $35 million for Bellinger, and Waters has been a stud for them. So that's not nothing to move the other way. Obviously, Bellinger is an upgrade to Waters, but that's a big piece to move.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that news, we'll move on to number 7 on the list. A guy very, very near and dear to my heart. Honestly, I think one of the most underrated pitchers in the league. You look at all the past 3-4 year stats; he's among the top 20 pitchers in baseball in terms of WAR. But Logan Webb of the San Francisco Giants. Nick, your thoughts on him and some fits?
I think he is probably the second best rental starting pitcher on the market, especially given his age. It just makes sense for the Giants to make a move like this down in the standings, and the overall depth of their farm. They will quickly recover from losing somebody with the talent of Logan Webb. Fits, I believe, would be Baltimore, Toronto, Detroit, and Houston.
Yep, I like it. I agree. Move on.
Minor trade here, real minor. The Atlanta Braves have acquired shortstop Cody Schreier from the Toronto Blue Jays in exchange for pitcher Daniel DeMonte.
So we found the Braves attempt to plug the shortstop hole here with Schreier, obviously. You get a 23-year-old that's looks to be a great defender, having a great year in AAA. Doesn't really have a spot in Toronto. He's a captain too. I think Zach can call it minor, but that seems like a pretty nice fit for them. Your guys' thoughts on the deal and the return?
Schreier looks more like a long-term utility piece, but an excellent one.
Yeah.
Reminds me a lot of a guy I mentioned as the Mets is Luis Guillorme. Just an all-around great defensive infielder. Whatever you get from him offensively, just kind of gravy.
Yeah, and on the DeMonte side, a guy who's pitching, who actually came to Atlanta from Detroit, pitching okay in AAA this year, but even for Toronto, it's not quite a prospect return. That's a guy who could, if needed with their injuries, could definitely contribute in the pen or in some fashion for them this year as well too.
And Tyler, before you get started, I'm going to transition right into another deal with a name that you just talked about. Logan Webb from the San Francisco Giants has been traded to the Atlanta Braves in exchange for third baseman Raul Ledesma.
So there we go. I can let you guys run with it, but Webb, as we touched on, a rental guy, get back a young, and what I think to be a kind of a fun prospect in Ledesma.
Fun.
Tanner Witt has died at third base, so the Giants have to figure that out somehow, and this was the attempt to do so.
Yeah, Ledesma's an interesting prospect, big time speed. Can't turn the double play, so won't play in the middle infield, but should be a good third baseman. Should be a solid hitter, hitting .534 right now in rookie ball, in 69 plate appearances. But he was a part of the Mackenzie Gore trade. I know that between me and Zach. A solid player. Could very well move up in prospect rankings as he moves up. Still very young. Like I said, he's hitting .534 right now, which is just fun. But yeah, a solid return for Logan Webb. and a guy who I think could be manning third base in San Francisco in a couple of years.
Bully Ledesma. Let's go. We're already about it. Nicknames get me going no matter what. All right. We'll move on to our 8th name on the list. Another outfielder, this time with the Mets, Alex Verdugo. Obviously, I think you always have to worry about some personality issues with Verdugo, but it's a great bat. A guy who has the potential to be a big time on base guy. Can really do it all offensively. Jason, your thoughts on him and fits for him?
Yeah, another really good player. Can probably corner outfielder. You know, he can play center field if you need him to, but you'd probably rather him out there in the corner. Solid OBP guy, got some power. Been a really solid player for the Mets. 2.6 WAR so far this year. He's on a $13 million contract now. Has 2 team options the next 2 years at $13 million each, which I think would be relatively easy to pick up by whoever ends up trading for him if he does move. Like we said, a lot of teams out there that could really use a bat. Those teams in the NL Central, maybe my Padres or the Diamondbacks out west are a couple teams to maybe look out for.
Yep. All right. We will move on.
We got one more coming in, and the Seattle Mariners have acquired prospect Anthony Nunez in exchange for starting pitcher Dylan Cease and Vince DeMars. Dylan Cease heading to the San Diego Padres.
Okay, so there is
15% retainment on Dylan Cease.
So a big time prospect in Nunez moves here. A guy with an eerily similar profile to Yurchak, who the Braves just traded for. Funny enough. I'm not sure what he's ranked now, but 27 there, at least at the start of the year. But they get back one of the best arm we had graded out on this today in Dylan Cease. And just the numbers you can imagine he'll put up in San Diego will be very, very fun to watch there.
Gotta have as many arms as possible to go up against Atlanta and Colorado. And Cease is as good as they get. Big strikeout numbers is something I'm always after.
Jason, any thoughts?
Yeah, Nunez is a guy I hate to give up. I just have really no room for him right now. He's kind of a second base only type, and I just have nowhere to play him. But yeah, getting Cease was big for me. I felt like I needed another big time arm to fill out my rotation. Like you said, there's so many offenses that I need to slow down at some point. So. And Cease is a guy that's under control for another 2 years.
Good to have. Yep. All right. So we got 1, 3, and 7 off the list so far. The 9th name on the list, probably one I would be shocked to see moved given the asking price I saw that was put out there on Yokota, but a guy who has been great since the Phillies signed him. I believe he was an all-star this year as well. Jason, your thoughts on him and maybe the same fits as some other teams that need starting pitching?
Yeah, I mean, he's, just signed in the offseason by the Phillies out of Japan. Pretty reasonable contract, $20 million straight for the next 2 years, through 27 with a player option for $20 million for 28. Is probably right up there with some of the better pitchers in the National League. And is going to be in the running for the Cy Young Award. Like we said, there's a number of teams that could definitely use pitching. But like you said, the asking price based on what it is, I'd be surprised to see him moved. But you never know. If some team decides they definitely need a starter, he might be. I mean, I know Cease. We were talking about Cease, but he might be right up there with Cease as the best starters available right now.
Yep.
We've got a couple of Central teams linking up here. The Milwaukee Brewers have acquired relief pitcher Durbin Feltman and shortstop Christian Cairo from the Cleveland Spiders in exchange for Victor Ramos, Bobby Alvarado, and $1 million cash.
All right. Without knowing too much, it seems like a little bit of book balancing there for the Spiders. Durbin Feltman, obviously a name I know who's been not good at all in their pen this year after being one of the better relievers in baseball in 2024 and 2025. So Maybe a good buy low for the Brewers there. Any other thoughts on that return and kind of what they gave up?
It led to Bellinger, so I don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, Victor Ramos is an interesting prospect, 19 years old, has potential for 4+ pitches, a changeup that kind of lags. Could be a starter, could be more of a spot starter type, but we'll see. He's a guy who's a little bit interesting, and then Alvarado is a control pitcher. Another guy with upside, but so the Brewers moved two guys with upside for kind of a reclamation project in Feltman, and then maybe a utility infielder in Cairo.
All right, with that, we'll get to our last name on the list, one we touched on a little bit, especially with the Rays acquiring a couple first basemen in different deals. But Bryce Ball for them, kind of a model of consistency, 37 home runs in 2024, 37 in 2025, on pace to do the exact same number again. Thoughts on where, really are outside of outfielders, you got Mauricio, but a first baseman. So kind of a new fit for some teams. Nick, your thoughts on him and landing spots?
He's undoubtedly the power bat on the market right now. His average has dipped a little bit over the last couple of years, seeing a bigger dip this year. But a move to a more hitter-friendly park would likely see those numbers increase. I think he'd be a good fit with the Angels, the Reds, the Rockies, the Padres, or the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, the Angels was the first name I thought about when we talked about them kind of working out their first base problems as a place that would work well for him. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one to see.
Guys, we've got another deal coming in. The San Francisco Giants have sent reliever Corey Knebel and utility infielder Addison Barger to the Kansas City Royals in exchange for Luis Flores and Montreal Nardini. Knebel is 100% retained.
All right, another sell-off deal for the Giants. Not a gigantic return. I'll save y'all a little bit of research. Flores is an interesting outfielder prospect. Nardini, kind of a young pitcher on that front. Knebel's been the closer and a good one for the Giants for the last couple of years. Royals, who another team in the Central that isn't calling it quits yet, and Addison Barger, kind of a nice solid reserve infielder as well. But Knebel, obviously the big return there.
I like KC making a push for a spot in the playoffs. One of the surprise teams in the AL. That really nice season.
That would be interesting. We could see 3 out of the Central, 3 out of the West, maybe in the NL. Just how it's shaping up right now. But yeah, I like the Royals making a fun little push here.
Absolutely.
All right, we got exactly 1 minute till the deadline. A number of other names on this list: Marcus Semien, another infield guy that people could use. Robert Dominguez, who's probably graded out as our best reliever on the board for the Mets, is an interesting name to see if they would get moved. Garabito, another starter. If someone was in need of a catcher, Francisco Mejia there as well. Waters, we actually saw move as well, our number 17 name. Baz, a starting pitcher, and then some infielders as well, and Tyler Freeman, Xavier Edwards, and Scott Kingery there at the tail end.
We've got a bit of a salary dump coming in here. The Washington Nationals have traded Blake Snell with 10% retainment along with 3 prospects to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for $1 million cash.
All right, so yeah, the Snell contract is not good, so it'll be interesting to see what they get in terms of return for him. Snell's maybe a guy that could turn it around. The profile's not terrible to me, so maybe it's maybe the Brewers still feel there's some upside with him. Got good pitch mix. It just hasn't worked out for whatever reason. He was a closer a year ago for the Nationals. Had just been pitching kind of out of the pen this year and hasn't been very good at all. good personality, worst case thing to bring into the locker room. So, any thoughts on here and the Nationals getting out of the Snell deal?
Just from a quick glance, Gallegos looks like a fun prospect. Really young, going to be coming from the international complex, but nice all-around profile, good-looking athlete. Interested to see how Snell does in Milwaukee, if he moves back into the rotation, because he can still go there, or if he sticks in the pen. But he's still talented, so we'll see if he turns it around.
So we've officially hit the deadline, and I'm still working the phone to see if there are any last-minute deals that are trickling in here. Bear with me if you guys want to just kind of review what's happened so far. Your thoughts on the deals. I'm still figuring out what we got going on as deals continue to trickle in.
Yeah, no, it seems like we've just already decided it's going to be a Spiders Braves World Series, and we'll all move on from that right now. I mean, obviously Bellinger's the big name to move. Padres make a nice move with Cease, but for you guys, any obvious winners of the deadline so far?
Everything's spotted for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to go with Cleveland, right? I mean, they just get the best player in the league. I mean, what more is there to say there? Give up a ton, have to give up Waters, but I mean, Bellinger's a game changer. I mean, there's nothing more to that.
Any teams that we were, that we haven't heard a deal from yet that we were surprised not to see one from?
Before anybody answers that, we've got a big one just came in. The Texas Rangers have sent outfielder Cedric Mullins to the Colorado Rockies in exchange for John Strickland and Chris McElvain.
I was honestly thinking about the Rockies as a team I hadn't heard from yet that I was going to be interested to see him move. So another top name on our list, and said he gets moved to Colorado, a pretty fun place to hit there. So an upgrade and a team that could use an outfield bat, like we touched on a little bit. But your guys' thoughts on this deal and their return?
That's going to kill it in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I unfortunately agree with that. Yeah, the return isn't too big. McElvain is a really good year in AA, but doesn't really profiles more as a utility infielder, a guy who can play. He's going to be good at wherever he plays, but just I don't know what you're getting with the bat. He's putting up some good numbers in AA, but he's already 25, and we'll see how that translates further.
Yeah, both really good defensive players.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we're left with just a couple of teams who didn't really make any huge. The Angels are a team I kind of think about as not making a move that probably could have. It's not like the Astros did a ton to really step on their throats either. So the West will be an interesting one to see play out. I mean,
no one in the NL Central really did much. I mean, the Reds get Green. Mm-hmm. I don't recall anything about the Cardinals or Cubs. So that, I mean, it's a division that's wide open, and it seems like no one really did anything to try and separate themselves from the rest of the pack.
Hey guys, the Kansas City Royals are continuing their playoff push. They've just acquired Jordan Hicks from the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for Luis Baca.
All right, so that's a couple big moves to upgrade the pen with Hicks and Knievel for the Royals there. Hicks having an okay year. He's been a little down since he's moved to Tampa Bay at last year's deadline, a little bit before last year's deadline, but still a guy who strikes out a ton of guys, and a pen that needed it too. So the Royals continue to look and address on that front as well.
Yeah, and I don't think Kansas City's done. I'm getting word they've also acquired reliever Silvino Bracco from the Texas Rangers in exchange for Rogelio Garcia.
They have a whole new bullpen by the end of this.
I was about to say, man, the AL Central turned into the NL West all of a sudden. What's going on here? But yeah, they're exactly some more talent for them. Bracco's a guy who was really, really good in 2025. Looking at his profile, has bounced around between the majors and AAA. I think he's in AAA right now. Hasn't pitched very well at all, so maybe a type of a change of scenery could help him out a good bit. But a guy who was a really nice reliever in 2025. So if he regains some of that form in Kansas City, he's another good option for him back there.
Broncos currently on a rehab assignment. $5 million this year, $5 million next year. Just kind of hoping he turns around in Kansas City, I guess.
A couple of AL East teams have linked up again. The Tampa Bay Rays have acquired shortstop Noah Smith from the Boston Red Sox in exchange for pitchers Jimmy Frick and Jimmy Thompson.
So I saw Noah Smith getting hyped up on the boards today. Really good defender. The bat is adequate, I would say. It's okay. He's playing down in he's also on rehab in AAA right now, but good third base, shortstop, second base, like almost a perfect utility type. Maybe doesn't have the skills to be a starter with that bat, but Rays, I wouldn't consider that a buy move for them, but getting a good young controllable piece, they can keep at the position moving forward.
And I think oh, go ahead, Jason.
Sorry?
Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, the return is pretty solid. Jimmy Thompson is right now this number 71 prospect in baseball. Potential for 3 above average pitches, was a first round pick last year. And then Frick is another fairly 22-year-old pitcher, currently in high A ball, pitching with 3 ERA. So those are 2 guys who could very easily fit into a Tampa Bay rotation within 2 or 3 years.
And I think we got one final deal here trickling in last minute. The Boston Red Sox have sent Eloy Jimenez to the Arizona Diamondbacks in exchange for Malp de Lauer, third baseman.
It's a great name they get back, if anything.
I don't know if that's spelled correctly. I was just
I don't think it is.
Just what I was sent, and I don't think it's right, but that's the name. Just type in Malp and you'll find them.
Oh, L-E-U-R.
L-E-U-R.
Yeah, I mean, Eloy, that's a pure just see if he can figure something out. I mean, he's relatively stunk for a number of seasons now. Been basically a 0 WAR player for the last 3 years, and pretty much just a rental for Arizona. And maybe he gets it going in a change of scenery, but I guess without knowing the lore and what he looks like, seems like a fair enough bet to take on if you're in search for some offense there.
Definitely wins the name of the day award.
Yeah. Worst case, the Red Sox got the best name we had out there. Is that we got anything else, or we wrap up in terms of deals?
I'm working the phones. I got one more coming in. It looks like the Arizona Diamondbacks have struck another deal last second. They've received Marcus Semien from the Philadelphia Phillies in exchange for pitcher Ken Barrett and shortstop Ezekiel Tovar.
Yeah, I mean, starting with Semien, a guy we all ranked him. He was in my top 10. He just missed it for us as a group, but that's a great ad. It's a good bat. He could play second or short. Really, maybe he's an elite second baseman and a fine enough shortstop if you want to play him there. The bat still really plays. He's a captain. It seems like a really nice ad for the Diamondbacks there.
I like what the Diamondbacks are doing. Adding nice pieces, not breaking the bank, and just moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I can confirm that is all of the trades for the 2026 trade deadline.
All right, so we got through a good number there. I think it was probably up to close to 20 by the end of things. So obviously a big deadline. We touched a little bit on some of the takeaways. right away? Anything stick out to you? Any names on this list maybe you were surprised not to see get moved? Ball.
Yeah. Although I think the
no
draft
real rush
was
to
relatively high. I'm sure he'll be shopped again in the offseason.
Yep. No, that was a pretty active one. We see 1, 3, 4, 7, 11.
5 and 6.
Oh, 5. Not no, just oh yeah, 5 and 6 stay. 17 and 20 move as well. So, yeah, a lot of deals with some of the big names. Bellinger, a big one. Cease, a big one. This is gonna be fun to play out. They're pretty obvious teams pushing in the West and the NL West and the AL Central. It seems. Be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out. Some very tight wild card races everywhere. So a lot of good deals on that front.
I think for me, the big names that didn't get moved were Bryce Ball, like you touched on, Scott Kingery, who I felt could have been moved for pretty much anything just to get something in return for him. Little shock Shane Baz didn't get moved. I thought now was a good time for Tampa. It seems like they're kind of retooling, rebuilding, whichever way you want to describe it. Thought maybe now is a good time for them to move on from him. And Alex Verdugo, I thought for sure the Mets were going to move on from him. It looks like they're kind of stuck in the middling place right now. And I don't know, maybe Cameron decided he's just going to kind of ride it out and see if he can make a push for the wild card spot with what he has.
Yeah, near the top, it seems like the Mets names. Mauricio, I think we were all a little hesitant on whether he'd get moved, but Verdugo and then Robert Dominguez too, who I think we all kind of agreed was the biggest reliever name out there. Probably had to get a good bit of interest on him. Surprised he didn't move as well. So, but all in all, good active deadline as it stays in this league, and really fun stuff all around.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you guys for bearing with me yesterday. Obviously, some last minute big plans came up, and I know I gave everybody 24 extra hours, but if you had Sunday night plans and canceled them because you wanted to tune in, I apologize.
No, I mean, I wasn't too upset about it. I think most of us understood that reasoning there. But hey, it probably helped me get both of mine done. So if anything, probably helped out get some more deals done.
There you go.
All right.
I just hope Colorado didn't make that Mullins move today.
Ugh.
All right, guys.
No comment.
Anything else for a wrap?
Yeah, I think that's a wrap on everything. I don't have anything else. You guys have anything else you want to input?
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Go Tigers.
Glad y'all are all competing.
Spiders fatigue. 29 teams have spiders fatigue. Just kidding, Shane. Don't get mad. Don't be a Johnny.
Perfect end quote there.
There you go. All right. Thank you, guys.
Of course. See y'all.
Bye.